I don't just want to be in the race for clean energy. I want us to win the race.
Net zero. Oh my God, isn't it awful? Tell you what, we're not even a part of it. Look at the numbers.
Net zero, you know what net zero, they have no idea what it means, by the way. It's net zero. What does that mean? Nobody knows.
Climate change has become a climate crisis, and a threat has now become a reality.
Zero carbon.
East off. Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista Series 6, The Cow in the Room. I'm Ian Collins, and this is your number one go-to environment-based podcast. Remember, if it's green, it is in. Yep. The man of the moment, the man with a diary bigger than...
Come on, bigger than what?
The trouble is, I've written down 6 options and none of them are really broadcastable. So the man with the busy diary is Dale Vince. And I say that because I tell you what I had in mind, Dale, because you had a bit of a week of it. I mean, I don't know whether you want to start with heat pumps or whether you want to start with the Blue Earth Summit, but it's been, if nothing else, eventful.
Yes, I think the discussion over heat pumps turned a little bit blue, actually, almost.
It did.
If that makes any sense in reference to the Blue Earth Summit. But let's start with heat pumps, right? Because it's a pretty incredible story. I did an interview in The Guardian, and I thought I did one in the India as well, actually. But I've been doing so many interviews, it's hard to keep track. And I really just said some new things about the heat pump program, the plan, slightly new things. I said publicly, I think it'll be a bigger backlash for Labour than ULEZ was. It'll be like ULEZ on steroids. And I was trying to warn them. I described it as a Johnson-era policy, which it is. And like all good Johnson-era things, it wasn't thought through properly. It's a nutty plan that we should all have a heat pump. It's going to cost 300 billion quid. We'll have to double the amount of renewable energy we build. People's bills will go up and we'll have to massively reinforce the grid. And by the way, it'll take 50 years to do it if we hit the 600,000 a year installation target. And by the way, we're at 40,000 a year at the moment. So we're a long way off a target, which is a long way off getting the job done for a really bonkers plan. I mean, that's the gist of it.
Yeah. And by the way, can I just say before you, that's the gist. This is the hors d'oeuvre to the main event. But there's very few people that, other than people flogging heat pumps, there's very few people that really seem to disagree with that assessment.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. And there seems to be this kind of like crowd think or herd mentality that says, oh, it's heat pumps in it, Gov. That's the answer. We've got to have heat pumps. Nobody's thought about it, which is, I think bizarre. I mean, of course, you're probably going here next, right? One of the people other than the heat pump, I nearly said meat pump, but the heat pump lobby, other than them, who thinks differently was, of course, George Monbiot.
Now, George, of course, is a well-known columnist. He writes for The Guardian and other places. You've locked horns previously.
Yeah, actually, over green gas, he did something similar then to what he did now. But what he did now was he just went all nutty on social media. I mean, properly hysterical. He said, I was promoting ecocide, which is a pretty incredible claim. He said, I was promoting falsehoods in a Daily Mail style, which is, quite rude. He said, I was doing it out of self-interest, which is just spiteful. Oh, and I think he said green gas was ecologically illiterate, something like that.
Yeah, something of that nature. But he didn't really, kind of like a bit of a dog with a bone, wasn't he? Because what I sense he disagreed with was the fact that you come up with quite a good idea and he hadn't. That's how an objective onlooker would read it. There I was on the train. I saw this dialogue between you and him begin, and I thought I got the train to stop so I could buy some popcorn, so I could continue watching what the heck was going on here. And it did seem. Yeah, I think my assessment would be he was just a bit pissed off with you.
Yeah, we did some radio, I think, last Sunday in the morning. He went first, I went second, and all I could hear was him attacking me personally. And, in my experience, whenever anybody does that, they've already lost the argument or they don't have an argument, so they just attack you personally. The right wing do it all the time. I mean, George Monbiot became a a left-wing troll this week on the issue of heat pumps. Really hard to understand.
Yeah, of all things. What do you sense just on the wider issue of heat pumps themselves? I mean, you pointed out the kind of maths either don't add up or they're certainly not going to be achieved. It would be extraordinary if they were, and the limitations and the problems and the shortcomings with heat pumps are known to everybody. Do you think the government will row back on this, or is it too late?
Well, you've got people like George Monbiot shouting very loudly in super denial over, some of the laws of physics and some simple mathematics. I say you need an heroic level of, it's called a COP, coefficient of performance, to keep your bills the same. And the reason for that is we use 4 times as much gas in our houses as we do electricity. To keep your bill the same, you've got to have a coefficient of performance of 4:1.
Yeah.
And George says that's a falsehood. And I'm like, well, sorry, that's actually a fact. And the real world coefficients of performance from the thousands that are out there are returning an average figure of 2.8. So there's a very long way to go to get to 4 to keep your bills the same. So when I say bills are going to go up, that's what's happening now, right? So I don't understand at all where he's coming from. But then we did a little bit of kind of looking around, and it turns out that 2 years ago, more or less this month, George fessed up in an article in The Guardian that he was a big wood burner. He's got 3 in his house. He had 3 in his house. Looks like he's had them for more than a decade. He was like a mini Drax, a one-man Drax. He thought burning wood was the answer, that we all just could heat our homes with wood. I mean, FFS. And you have to ask yourself, what does he actually know about these environment issues when he thought that burning wood was the answer?
Does anybody still? I mean, even Jacob Rees-Mogg doesn't think that burning wood is the answer.
I don't.
He's got a freaking mansion.
He burns children, I think. I don't know.
Something like that. I mean, that was a big surprise to me to learn that Monbiot loved a bit of wood burning against the backdrop of an environmental catastrophe.
I said to him, look, have you got a heat pump? Right? Because I have, and I've been using them for 20 years. Have you got a heat pump? Where's this coming from? He says he doesn't have a heat pump, actually, but some of his friends do, which is nice. And he lives in a passive house, which doesn't need any heating at all, which is great. But tens of millions of people live in houses that are nowhere near that standard of insulation, and heat pumps will be very different for them. And it's almost like he's in some kind of ivory tower, passive house ivory tower, pontificating through The Guardian, clickbaiting me on social media about this issue that I don't think he has a fucking clue about. Honestly.
Well, I'd never heard of a passive house, Dale. Is such a thing exist?
Yeah, they're amazing. The levels of insulation are so high that you barely need any heating at all.
So that's your floors, your ceilings, your walls, everything is kind of like...
Yeah.
But does that mean you do not end up with a room that's about 2 feet wide because you've sealed the wall with mattresses?
No, they're amazing houses. They usually got a lot of glass in them as well, actually. But, glass these days can be incredibly high insulating. Anyway, there you have it. Like some, incredible event on social media. Really, George Monbiot just gone nuts. I don't understand it. I thought he was a serious journalist, and I thought he would deal in facts, but he's actually just dealing in insults. Wild claims.
Sounds like he's dealing in wood as well.
In wood, yeah. I want to know where his 3 wood burners went.
Where'd you get your wood from? Just go and see George around the corner. He's got loads.
George 3 staves. That's what I'm going to call him now.
A couple of bundles. Let's talk about the Blue Earth Summit, Dale. Tell us more. This was a big part of your week.
Yeah, I was there yesterday, and it's in Woolwich. It was in Woolwich this year. I think it was in Bristol last year, and actually there were hundreds of people there. There was a real buzz about the place. I did a talk, the cow in the room kind of thing, but it was much wider than that. I had a real good time, made like no end of contacts with people that wanted to pitch me ideas and stuff like that. But the whole thing was plant-based food. I was really pleased to see that. And I think that we gave them a nudge last year to say, come on, you can't have a serious environment event and serve meat, right? It's that comes back to the cow in the room.
Yeah, of course.
It was a great event.
And what the idea of this? I mean, this is not a one-off, right? This happens annually?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, like I say, last year it was in Bristol, I believe, because I went there. But I go to a lot of places. And this year, they moved to London. It looks like a great venue. It was Woolwich. I hadn't been to Woolwich before, but it's just nice, really nice.
Worth a trip.
Yeah.
Some nice pubs in Woolwich. That's my memory of Woolwich.
Is it?
This comes from the Host on X, who says, please invite George onto the podcast to debate the heat pump issue once and for all. Can I answer that?
Yeah, go for it, yeah.
No.
Yeah, go for it, yeah.
I don't think he would come anyway, would he?
Well, right now, incredibly, he's on social media saying, why can't we have a proper debate? I'm like, what?
I can also, I just remember this as well. We've invited him on with you on our show as well on the radio, and he's not come on.
But recently?
No, I think a couple of times over the last couple of years. I'm sure more than once.
So last time it happened, he kicked off about green gas. I forget when it was. I said to him, look, let's meet up because I think you misunderstand our plans. And he said, no, I prefer to debate on Twitter.
What? It's the worst place in the world to have a logical debate where so much gets lost and the time lapse. It's just like...
And loads of people on social media, I say loads, it's a couple, and I say, look, you guys need to have a proper discussion, get on a podcast, that kind of stuff. And George is like, we need a proper discussion. I'm like, fucking hell. I mean, way to go, George, way to go. You accuse me of ecocide and Daily Mail style falsehoods, and you've got no facts to back any of that up. And then you say, oh, can we have a proper discussion? And I think, actually, I don't think you deserve one. This is all being clickbait for your audience, but I will give him one. I'm going to get my team to reach out and say, all right, then let's do it.
Yeah, he can come on the podcast if you see how quickly I rolled over that. It's a very vicious red line that just turned into, come on, George, in you come, son.
You're hoping to score some wood, aren't you? That's what it is.
That's all I want. I just want the man for his wood. Greg says, it's great to see amongst an ocean of unabashed venality a wealthy corporate figure advocating for higher corporate tax in the UK. It restores some faith in our business community. We need voices like yours, Dale, advocating for ethical capitalism. It's much appreciated. And this is your comments again this week, and something you've said for a while, that corporation tax is really in the wrong place on the slider at the moment.
Yeah, I was explaining in a different media outlet, I forget which one, there's so many, that, corporation tax, business tax is so fundamentally different to income tax, and it's wrong. It's lower than income tax on the one hand, but it's only paid on profits. It's not paid on income. So, we all have a job and we get income tax on what we earn, and then we pay our cost of living. Businesses pay all of their costs, and then they pay a lower rate on what's left. And it's a flat rate. It doesn't matter how much you earn as a business, 10 million or 10 billion. It doesn't matter. You pay the same flat rate. So I was just saying all of that's wrong. They asked me what rate of corporation tax did I think we should go to. I said, look, 30% would be no harm. We've done 30% before. The Tories argued if they slashed it, we'd get a big growth spurt. They slashed it. We got no growth spurt. That's the story around the world. The data, doesn't support the idea that lower business tax drives growth. We talked about capital gains tax as well. Because I've been making the case for a long time that that's just a different form of income for people that have money. You can make money with money. It can be through dividends or capital gains of property or whatever it is, but you pay a lower rate than if you've got a job. So money made with money is taxed at a lower rate than money made with a pair of hands.
What about that argument that if you have it lower, more people invest in the country? I know some people always cite Dublin as a good example for swift recovery because they had such a generous corporation tax rate. Is that true or false?
I think it's bollocks. Actually, can I choose that option?
Yeah, I think that's an official economic term, actually. These days.
It should be. It definitely should be. Yeah, look, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, right? So why don't we give people a lower rate of tax to incentivize them to work harder?
What, right?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I know.
You floored me with the logic there. I thought you must have said something more complicated than I thought.
Right.
It's quite simple,
That's right. But these poor businessmen and women, we have to incentivize them to get out of bed with a super low rate of tax so they can help us all grow the economy. That's just a load of bollocks.
Can we just bring in as well? We'll come to the NHS story in a second, which is really interesting. Talking about wood burning, government plans to burn imported biomass, which might actually come from North Korea, which in itself would be a reason not to do it, maybe. What's the deal with this, then? This is apparently a plan to reach net zero. Can you do that by burning wood?
Well, apparently this is not this government's plan. It's another legacy of the last Tory regime. And they had realized, in answer to your question, no, we can't get to net zero because there's not enough wood in Canada, for f***'s sake, for us to burn. I mean, just dwell on that for a second. Canada does not have enough wood for us to burn to get to net zero. It shows you how pointless it is to try and use wood as a world to try and do that. And it's not just North Korea, it's Afghanistan they're thinking of bringing wood from. And I think to myself, surely to God, Afghanistan is not renowned for being a tree-covered country, is it?
No, I think if you asked a kid to draw a picture of Afghanistan, it would probably have no trees in it. Right?
I think so. It'd be a
You
mountain.
just don't associate Afghanistan with, a verdant land of rainforests.
Yep. So It does say in the article that the document published last year has seemingly been adopted by the Labour government, but I think that's a little bit of supposition. I'm certainly hoping that it hasn't been adopted by the Labour government. All comes back to our friend Drax, doesn't it? And the One Man Drax, George Monbiot. Got to mention him again. No, I haven't. It all comes back
to probably holidays in Canada trying to get a cheap deal or something.
It all comes back to our friend Drax, doesn't it? You know,
always back to Drax.
Always back to Drax. And I mean, these guys are burning so much wood from Canada. It lands on our shores magically free of carbon because the Canadians claim that for themselves because they don't give a shit about that anyway, and we do. True. And it's all kinds of just stupid. And I think we put something like £8 billion into this ex-coal burning, now tree burning madness.
Here's a question from Julie who says, have you thought of projecting the cow in the room onto the Houses of Parliament? Maybe a cow-shaped projection instead of standard format.
Yeah. Interesting.
I like the little bit of advice on the end as well. How to get it right.
I have thought about it now. That's the answer. But I was wondering, what is the standard format? I guess it's a bunch of words or something. I'm not really sure.
Is there a place you go to get the standardized parliamentary beaming format?
I don't know. We did some beaming, though, didn't we, in our Just Vote phase, you know, when we had that campaign to encourage people
to vote. That's right. So beaming has happened.
Yeah, and we got shut down by the cops because, you know, we were, after all, a pro-democracy campaign, right? And we can't have that.
Can't have that at all. I think Monbiot was behind that.
He could be our new villain.
He was seen in a phone box going, they're projecting it onto the Houses of Parliament, officer. Get down there and arrest them. I think we should talk about this as well, because this got a lot of traction this week. Health experts call on the NHS to make vegan food the norm in hospitals. I mean, you've been saying this quite a lot anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And we joined the campaign. They reached out. I think they saw us probably with our schools campaign at the Labour conference and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, they reached out and said, love that. Do you want to join ours? And we're like, yeah, sure thing. Because it just makes great sense, doesn't it? I mean, the very last place you want unhealthy food is when you're in hospital recovering from an operation or some kind of illness. You really need healthy food there. And of course, you're not getting it. So it makes a lot of sense. You know, we talked on our podcast actually about a trial in New York a couple of years ago in which they did this. They changed the menus in all hospitals in New York to be plant-based first. And if you wanted that other shit, you just had to ask for it.
I mean, of all places that you might think would have the healthiest food, it would be a hospital, wouldn't it? I mean, you wouldn't imagine that was ever a point of debate.
No. How mad is it? How mad is it that we feed this rubbish to people that really, really need healthy food to recover with? But, you know, I mean, I think actually we may have a question on this or a question that reflects this, but there are people out there that are saying, oh, blimey, you know, you need meat to like grow your skin and recover from operations and stuff like that. I mean, people still believe that actually we need meat and stuff like that in order to be healthy, when actually the truth is the opposite.
Do you know who else agrees with you on this?
No, I've no idea.
George Monbiot.
I didn't know, really.
He actually agrees with you on this.
We agree on a lot of things, you know, but...
Well, you probably agree on more than you don't, but for some reason, George gets very, very animated on the things you don't.
It's incredible, but we've been there. I need to move on.
That we need to contact the United Nations.
We need some peacekeepers. We need some peacekeepers.
There you go. That's the answer. Here we go. It's time for X-Rated Corner.
My favourite.
Which, of course, this is the fine bit where people who send in comments and queries and questions that aren't always quite so flattering, but Dale's shoulders are broad and he can take this kind of stuff standing up. Deliberati Dawn says...
I love that name, by the way. I love that name.
I know. Yeah. I know, it's well thought out, to be fair. Is this NHS vegan narrative the world is pushing coming from Dale Vince? Is there a nice little earner behind this, Dale? Doctors know that meat and fish are essential for recovering patients and growing children. This is the circle of life, the natural order of things.
Well, look.
There you go. There's quite a lot in there.
There is. Newsflash, Dawn. Them doctors what know are the people lobbying for the NHS to change its menu. Because actually they do know, and it isn't about meat and dairy. And by the way, this nice little earner, I'm going to call that the Monbiot argument.
The Monbiot effect.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're just saying that because you're making money from it.
You've been Monbioed. We will call people out when they have been. Portobello Dan says...
He's a mushroom, right?
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah.
Who is funding Dale Vince's anti-heat pump stance? Is he in bed with the fossil fuel companies?
So
yeah, right. Yeah, never thought of that, Dale.
Oh.
We've rumbled you.
Well, this is hilarious because even if you get to that coefficient of performance we spoke of 4, the magical place that keeps your bill the same, you will use twice as much electricity in your house as you do now. If I was trying to make money out of this, being somebody that runs an energy company, I'd be going, yeah, go ahead, fools. Have some heat pumps because you'll actually be using more energy than you'd be paying me more money than you do now. Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
So it's a completely us about face kind of theory that I'm trying to make money out of this. I'm trying to save people money, save the country money. It's a madly unthought through program.
And while we're on it, just say hello to our friends at Shell Oil, who are the proud sponsors of this podcast. And we look forward to that holiday in Barbados, Dale. Naturally, that is not true. This comes in from Charlotte, who says, the Good Law Project are the ones who go marching about, whinging about Tufton Street. They are funded by Dale Vince, among others. I'm going to look into this in detail.
Look, I don't fund Tufton Street, just in case anybody heard that wrong.
Yeah, I think what Charlotte is saying is you fund the Good Law Project.
Yeah, I've given them some money in the past. It's just not them silly conspiracy theory things, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? But and all this Tufton Street stuff, I don't get it. I mean, I kind of like, yawn, Tufton Street. It's like a left wing conspiracy theory. There is a house somewhere in Tufton Street, apparently, where all these kind of right wing policy wonks and
a lot of think tanks come out of there, Dale. Do a lot of good work.
Think tanks. That's the word I was looking for. Policy wonks and think tanks.
The Institute for Environmental Concern or something like that. Because there's usually names that make you think, oh, this is the real deal.
That's right. They're all misnamed.
Yeah. The Green Initiative for a Better Planet. You think, well, what more could be wrong with? What could be wrong with that?
What more could be wrong with that? Yeah,
indeed.
When you read what it does, go on.
Final one from Walton Bonderers.
I like that.
Who says, anybody seen this BBC drama Industry? They've clearly modelled their green entrepreneur Sir Henry Muck on Dale Vince's climate racket. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen it. We don't watch the telly, do we, Dale? I said that like we live in the same house.
You did. I think it's true separately. We both don't watch the telly. But I'm intrigued. That's clearly a Bolton Wanderers fan. And, I'm friends with most Bolton Wanderers fans.
Both of them.
But Sir Henry, never heard of this Sir Henry Muck fella. But, no. If he's an ex-traveller who doesn't give a shit and he's got a funny haircut, then yes, it's me.
There you go. It is. Yeah. And Sir Henry Muck doesn't like heat pumps either, apparently.
Yeah, probably not. Probably, or George Monbiot, probably.
We will see.
Probably.
Dale, we'll speak on the next episode.
I can't wait.
Don't forget to follow Dale on social media. You'll find him at facebook.com/DaleVince, Twitter or x.com/DaleVince, and of course on TikTok too.
Absolutely.
Zero carbon.
East of.